What is up, Packers fans? Happy Wednesday. Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack-A-Day Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can follow the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Of course, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, give those 5-star reviews. If you're on the YouTube channel, anything you can do to interact with the show. If you're on the audio side, again, those reviews are amazing. We always appreciate them. And of course, make sure to tell a friend or family member about the podcast as well. And of course, we've got those Pack-A-Day Podcast YouTube memberships as well. Speaking of which, huge shout out to Brad Havlick, Elda Grimm, Nick McSwain, Chris C., Justin Held, Jason Stoll, Kyle Weber, and Scott Thornton for becoming all new Pack-A-Day Podcast members. Appreciate you guys signing up. And then we've got our Luigi's Frozen Pizza Player of the Week. I hate to do this 2 weeks in a row, but it's Malik Willis. There's no question about it. What he was able to do in a second consecutive week in Nashville against his former team. Listen, we can give him all of his flowers for the game against the Colts. He is deserving of it. There's nothing that should take away from his performance, but we can also see the masterful Matt LaFleur at work and what he was able to do to put together a running offense that made it so that Malik Willis didn't have to do a ton of heavy lifting. You could do a lot of handing off, a little bit of running, a couple throws here and there, but the offense was amazing in and of itself and how they were able to design that offense for a victory against Indianapolis. But you knew it was going to be a lot harder against the Tennessee Titans, against his former team. He was going to have to throw it a little bit more, and Willis did a tremendous job of winning with both his arm and his legs, and it was an astounding performance. So we'll talk about more on that in just a moment, but our Luigi's Pizza Player of the Week is, for the second consecutive week, Malik Willis. And remember, of course, you still have time to do the Luigi's Victory Monday hashtag. All you have to do, follow Pack-A-Day Podcast, follow Luigi's Pizza, LuigiSpizza on Twitter, follow both accounts, and tweet Luigi's Victory Monday for an opportunity to get a case of Luigi's frozen pizzas. And trust me, it is worth it. So make sure to tweet that out and you will get entered for a chance to win. They give away a case of pizzas every time the Packers win. So hopefully we've got a lot more of these opportunities coming up, but you have one right now, so take advantage of it. Before we get into grades for this week, we do have a little bit of an updated injury report. I'm recording this prior to Matt LaFleur speaking and getting an official injury report, but the media did have the opportunity to see who was practicing and who was not. Great news, Carrington Valentine did return to practice, so hopefully that's a great sign for him. Meanwhile, Tucker Kraft did practice. He was in the red no-contact jersey, but he did practice with that on. Jordan Love, kind of an important one. He was back at practice. Now, I am sure he will be LIMITED when Matt LaFleur speaks at his press conference later today, but he was back at practice again, which again is a good sign for him. In fact, the only player who was not practicing in any capacity was once again Jordan Morgan. So it does seem like Green Bay, for the most part, got out of that last game pretty injury-free, which is always a bonus. You always have two games that go on within the game. There's the actual game itself. Did you get a win or a loss? And then sort of the Thanos, what did it cost you along the way? And sometimes that cost can be massive and you can lose some big time players for extended period of times. Thankfully, this past week, it doesn't seem like they had any lingering or major issues coming out of that game, which is a win on top of a win. All right, let's get into our highest and lowest graded players from this past week, both on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. We'll start on offense. My top three graded offensive players: Malik Willis, plus 1.40, Emmanuel Wilson, plus 0.85, and Sean Ryan, plus 0.60. Start with Willis. We started talking about it a little bit with our Luigi's Player of the Week, but I guess what Matt LaFleur had confidence in him doing in this game was astounding. And we have seen in the past, you get into some of these 3rd and 18s, 3rd and 14s, and Matt will even be apt to check it down when Aaron Rodgers is at quarterback, when Jordan Love is at quarterback. And I'm not saying he had more faith in Malik Willis than those two guys, but it was pretty incredible that in some high leverage situations on some extreme 3rd and longs, which are extremely difficult to, try to navigate in the modern NFL, he's like, yeah, we're going to let Willis let it rip. And he rips a 14-yard completion over the middle of the field on 3rd and 14 to Romeo Doubs. And the beauty of that play where he's looking left, he's looking at Jaden Reed in the slot, looking at him, comes back to his right, sees Doubs just get out of his break, rips a seed right in the middle of the field in stride, and then Doubs plucks it out of the air, gets the yardage necessary to pick up the first down. A beautiful play, a beautiful throw, and some big-time stuff from Malik Willis. And then you third and 18, third and 19, whatever it was, like clearly you're not going to rip a ball downfield on that. And if it is, maybe it's a go ball and maybe you just give a 50-50. And even if it gets picked, it's a long ball down the field. It's like a long punt anyway. No. Third and 19, you're ripping a shot in between two defenders to Christian Watson, and it's placed perfectly. I mean, beyond perfectly. And then, of course, he does the hurdle and out of bounds and everything like that. But just an unbelievable throw. And then you talk about navigating the rest of the game. Yes, he took a few sacks. I would say one or two of those was more of like, you know what? I get it. There's one play that they love to leak out a tight end along the sidelines on a wheel route. And last year was funny. This play was open every single time, and they just, for whatever reason, couldn't hit on it. There were a couple times Love missed it. There was another time a pressure got to him. It's something that always went wrong on it. This is the one time that it was actually covered up, that the defense actually had a player accounted for the tight end up on the wheel route. He had nowhere really to go. And he probably could have just got rid of the ball and maybe thrown it over Tucker Kraft's head and not taken the sack there. But he didn't force a ball. And that was the big thing there. And there, again, a couple of the other sacks he maybe navigated things a little bit differently. Sure. But we're talking about some major nitpicking at that point. He did not put the ball in harm's way. No fumbles. And then the escapability, the running ability. I mean, early in the game on that first drive, for him to be able to do some of the read option and take it, and then use his great speed and athleticism to get down the field to pick up major yards. And then there were a couple other ones where he had to navigate some very tight rushing alleys to pick up some additional yardage, including on a big third down where he just barely picked up a first down. Great pickup, great blitz pickup that we'll talk about in just a second here on that one. But the escapability, the athleticism. But this was, if Colts Packers was Malik Willis as game manager, this was game manager plus, meaning he did all the things that you would want from a game manager quarterback, taking care of the football, not putting it in harm's way, not having negative plays, and just distributing the football as needed. I mean, you're kidding me. A slot fade to Christian Watson that's perfectly thrown so he can go up and get that. I mean, we are talking about starting level quarterback stuff. We're not talking about some random backup that Matt LaFleur had to do his best wizardry to conjure up a game plan for. This was Malik Willis playing QB at a very high level. Like, that's astounding. It is a unbelievable story. And credit to Willis, credit to LaFleur, credit to the entire staff and all the players around him who clearly rallied around him to put him in some of these positions and went up and got the ball when they had the opportunities. But you've got to be kidding me. So you did all the game manager stuff, but then when you needed a play on 3rd and 14, 3rd and 18 with his arm, completed both of those. When you needed third downs to pick up with his legs, he escaped and picked up those third downs. And then in the red zone, ran for a touchdown, threw the touchdown on this. It was a screen pass, but still, like, overall, outstanding game and clearly worthy of top graded player in this game on the offensive side, actually on either side of the ball. I talked to you last week a little bit about how quarterbacks always going to have a little bit of a steeper, opportunity to have a high grade or a low grade. He came through twice. And when you have very minimal negative plays, I would say there was maybe one or two sacks that he, again, probably could have done something a little bit different on. There was the 2 deep balls down the field that, didn't really give his wide receivers an opportunity to make a play on. And then there was the rollout on the first drive where to Dontavian Wicks, he's got Wicks on the deep or intermediate crosser and just misses him. So there's a couple plays in this game, but my goodness, every quarterback's going to have a few of those throughout the course of a game. He was outstanding and deserving of a very good grade in this one. Number 2, as I mentioned, Emmanuel Wilson plus 0.85. And this is another one where you're talking about a player that you're asking to do more than just run the football. And we, again, knew going into preseason, or really with preseason last year in 2023, we knew that this guy is good with the ball in his hands. That's never really been a question. It's been all the other stuff. Can he catch the ball out of the backfield? Can he pick up the blitz? And that's what I loved about this one. First of all, he averaged over 4 yards per carry on this one, which it may not seem like a ton. It was tough sledding for the running backs in this one, especially in the middle of the field, which I think Green Bay maybe was a little bit stubborn, but I understand the stubbornness because you still have to run the ball. You can't just run outside zone or toss plays all game. You got to get them inside and outside. You've got to be multiple and show some of those looks. That's going to set up the play action. That's going to set up some of those outside runs. So yeah, a lot of those were 1 to 2 yard gains, but he still found a way to average over 4 yards per carry in this one. So good day running the ball, but it was some of the other stuff that was mostly impressive. The screen pass. I mean, the screen pass is well set up and a great design, But man, does he get up to speed and run with power and is just running through arm tackles like they're not even there. That was impressive to watch. And then he had, as I mentioned, on that third down opportunity with Malik Willis to step up. And hopefully I have not said Will Levis on this one so far. I don't know why. I apologize. I know a couple of people pointed it out yesterday. For whatever, it's the funny thing is I knew going into the week, I'm like, there's something in my head that wants to say Will Levis and Malik Willis and like transpose the two. And I don't know why. I know that obviously they were both on the Titans. They both played each other last week. I get it. And the names aren't like totally different, whatever. But I knew going into the week, I'm like, I got to make sure I say Malik Willis and not Will Levis. I got to make sure. And the funny thing is I thought I got through the week of like, okay, thankfully, I don't think I messed it up once. And then apparently I've said it a bunch. So my apologies for that. So hopefully I've called him Malik Willis all throughout this podcast. I think I have, knock on wood. But with his ability to pick up the blitz, going back to Emmanuel Wilson, for Malik Willis to step up into and gain those extra yards, that was a huge play in the game. So you're talking about a player who ran hard, who then had the catch out of the backfield on the screen pass, took it to the end zone for a touchdown, his first touchdown of his career, and then picked up a great blitz for the second consecutive week and allowed his quarterback to make a play. That's what you're talking about. That's a well-rounded, all-around back. I don't know if Emmanuel Wilson would have made the 53 if Lloyd and Dillon were healthy all throughout camp and going into the season. But man, am I glad he's on the 53-man roster. He looks really good right now. He looks like a player that you can trust at any moment. Quite frankly, I certainly want Josh Jacobs to stay healthy and to carry the load for the remainder of the season. But if you said they had to go into a game where it was Emmanuel Wilson as the primary back, I don't have any major concerns at the moment because he has shown me enough that he is a well-rounded, all-around back that can do a little bit of everything. And that is a pretty significant step for Emmanuel Wilson. And I want to add one more thing. I talked about this, I think, a little bit earlier this week, but he has the ability to go north and south. So plant his foot, get north and south, and run. And sort of, we talk about converting speed to power for edge rushers. He's got sort of that ability to convert speed to power as a running back, where he just, again, he gets going, and it's like that juggernaut momentum of you're just not going to get an arm tackle down on him. But he has a unique, just little movement from side to side. We're not talking, Barry Sanders-esque here. We're not talking Marshall Faulk, but it's enough of a fluctuation in his running style that makes it hard. And he's got little cuts here and there that allow him to be even more elusive. And I think a lot of these bigger bruising backs and some of the juggernaut type backs that take a little bit of time to maybe get up to speed, which he doesn't really, he gets up to speed very fast, but they always don't have that a little bit of elusiveness. And Wilson does. He's a very unique back. Really like what I've seen so far in a really great game in this one against the Titans. And then Sean Ryan, plus 0.6. I thought he was the best offensive lineman on the day, which is saying something. I thought the offensive line had some ups and downs. Obviously, again, running inside on Jeffrey Simmons and Tavondre Sweat, you knew was going to be tough sledding all day long. But I thought Sean Ryan pass protected well. He got active in the run game. He got to the second level with these. I know that there were some concerns about maybe his overall conditioning, going into the season. It was last season, the year before that as well. But 90-degree day in Tennessee, a lot of action for the offense, played the whole game. There was nobody to rotate with him in this one. There was no Jordan Morgan taking 20, 30 of his snaps. There was no John Runyon Jr. from last year taking the majority of the snaps. This was his game. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think is the first time that he's played a full game in his career. I could be misremembering a game here or there, but I think the first one, and he looked like he was in shape, ready to go, no signs of slowing down, and played really good football throughout on this one. This to me was again, if Emmanuel Wilson, really all three of these guys, think about this. Malik Willis cemented himself. Mina Kimes mentioned this as well, and I talked about earlier this week, or maybe it was even last week, he cemented himself as a 10-year, decade-long quarterback in the NFL from these past 2 weeks. He will have a job in the NFL for a while because what he did, because you can win with him. We'll have to see still if you can win because of him. They kind of did this past week, which is, again, mind-blowing. But he will have a huge career now because he showed that he can go and win football games in the NFL. That is massive for him. Emmanuel Wilson, the question was, all right, this guy can be a good runner, but can he do everything else? And now the answer is yes, he can do a little bit of everything, and he might even be able to be the guy if you need him to. And Sean Ryan, the question was, all right, is this just somebody who's like your sixth offensive lineman, can come in and give you some snaps if need be, maybe a rotational guy, whatever, or can he be the guy? And this was a huge step for Sean Rhyan, in my opinion, as well, that he can be a legitimate good starting lineman. To me, he's playing better. We saw John Runyon Jr. get a $10 million deal from the Giants this offseason. He's playing better now than Runyon did in his last 2 seasons at any point. 3 years ago, 2021, he was really good. Runyon was. But Sean Rhyan playing really good football right now. And this, I think, was arguably the best game of his career so far. Bottom 3 offensive players. We didn't quite have the nobody grading in the negative like we did a week ago, but it wasn't far off. Rasheed Walker, negative 0.5, was the lowest graded player. Now, a lot of people asking me, what would he have been without the holding penalties? I'd have to go back and look at the exact number, but he basically would have been neutral, or maybe right around neutral either way, whether it's a plus 0.1 or minus 0.1, whatever. Like, he would have been very much in the neutral conversation one way or the other had he not had the 2 penalties. Now, the 2 penalties are big. You've got an illegal hands to the face, you've got a holding penalty, and he's had 6 penalties in 3 games, and it's far too much, and it's costing the Packers. And if that happens against Minnesota, it's going to cost them a ton, because you cannot get in disadvantageous down and distances against this Minnesota Vikings defense. So that's going to have to be something that he corrects. But I've seen some of the, Rasheed Walker, they need to look at Jordan Morgan at left tackle. No. He is a good starting offensive lineman. He is pass protecting well. I think he has the second best pass protection win rate in the NFL so far. It's on a few limited snaps just because the Packers haven't thrown the ball a ton, especially these past couple weeks. But I think he's got the second best pass rush win rate of all tackles in the NFL. It's in the top 5 for sure. He is pass protecting well. And there's some good run blocking stuff. There's a great play that I believe it was Wendell Ferreira posted on Twitter this week. I know I retweeted it, whoever it's from. I'm almost positive it was from Wendell, of him getting double block on a play, doing a great job of setting his initial block, then getting to the second level and making another block. You will see some really good stuff from Rasheed. So I have no concern here. To me, he is going to be their left tackle, I think, for a while. He just needs to settle in a little bit. I think he will. He was great at the end of last year. I have a lot of faith in Rasheed Walker. Just has to cut out the penalties. I think he will. He'll get that under control. Just not panic, not get grabby. It's kind of like a corner at the point of attack where all of a sudden the ball is coming your way and you get a little panicky. I think sometimes a Josh Jacobs might cut back into his area and he's like all of a sudden like just a little bit more. Just trust your technique, play the game the way it's supposed to be played, and everything will settle down for Rasheed Walker. He's going to be just fine. And then the other 2 were Ben Sims and Luke Musgrave, both with a negative 0.1 grade. And from a Ben Sims standpoint, he played 1 snap. And it just so happened he kind of got thrown down or like thrown away on his initial block. So they went and blocked him, or he went to block and the guy could just kind of threw him away. And then he got to his second block and kind of did okay on that one, but was just kind of more of getting in the way. It wasn't a great rep from Ben Sims. It wasn't brutal. It wasn't egregious, anything. It was just not a good rep. So slight negative there for Ben Sims on his 1 snap. And then Luke Musgrave, I know the play that people are going to point to, of course, is the one where they're doing a counter play and Luke Musgrave is coming across and he goes to block the dude and all of a sudden he gets jacked up into the backfield. Emmanuel Wilson runs into him and it's like a 4 or 5 yard loss. Awful from an optics standpoint, right? What I try to do is when I go through and grade these players is view them as, all right, what could have they have done? What would, not what I would have done, because that would not end well, but you get my point. Like, what are they seeing on the play? So what you have happen, like 99 times out of 100 on these plays, is the tight end goes into motion, you're letting the defensive end run free, and then you're hitting him at the point of attack. You're trying to get under his pads. You're not trying to block him out of the way. You're just trying to get in his way, stop his momentum, so that counter can get back in the other direction, or the whatever run play you're doing can get going. And it's just a quick seal, and it's enough to get that running back into the hole, and you don't have to worry about that defensive end that didn't block. Meanwhile, everyone else can kind of down block or do whatever that they need to do, so that defensive end is coming free, and then Musgrave is going to go get him and just seal him off. So what you see a lot on this is the defensive end scraping down the line, the tight end coming in motion the other way, and you get this big, as I collide with my microphone, you get this big collision that takes place, and you're supposed to just, again, make it enough so that the defensive end cannot get to that running back. I don't know if the timing was off here. Maybe Musgrave didn't get to his point in the motion or what it might be. But by the time the ball is snapped, Musgrave is coming across and he's going to do his usual, like, I'm going to get in this guy's way, so it's going to allow Emmanuel Wilson time to get up into the hole. And Arden Key is going to beat me at some point, but I just need to get into his way enough. As he gets there, all of a sudden, Arden Key is flying through the air at him, trying to go make a play. And you can tell, like, he's ready to go and block this dude, and all of a sudden he's doing a cross body block across the entire formation. And all of a sudden, like Musgrave gets knocked backwards. He goes right into the running back and it ends up in a huge, the optics of it were brutal. And it's not a great play by Musgrave one way or the other, but to an extent, I'm like, tip of your cap, Arden Key, I guess. Way to go full WWE and make your way across the field. I don't know. It's not a great play. I think maybe the timing was slightly off and Musgrave maybe didn't get to his spot on the field. It's still a negative on the play, but that's one of those that's just, something was just off with it. And I don't know how much I actually blame Musgrave because I don't know what he could have done when you've got a flying 260-pound edge rusher coming at you kind of out of nowhere. So that was that. And then outside of that, just again, some blocks that were not great, which is sort of the consistent thing from Luke Musgrave. Had the one catch for 3 yards. Just there's not enough positive plays from Luke because he's not a great blocker. He's going to lose more often than not as a blocker. And in order to make up for that, you have to make some plays in the passing game. It just wasn't there. So not anything egregious. Again, negative 0.1 on the day. But you would like to see a little bit more impact to get some of those positive grades going in his ledger and kind of evening out some of the negatives from a blocking standpoint. So nothing brutal though here. Again, Rasheed Walker, negative 0.5, Ben Sims, negative 0.1, and Luke Musgrave, negative 0.1. Some other quick noteworthy players on offense. Christian Watson, plus 0.5, 2 really big catches on the day and continued to block really well on the outside. Jaden Reed, same thing, plus 0.45. They got the ball in his hands with consistency again. Had the great first play, picking up, 20, 30 yards. Had a great block on Malik Willis's, almost said Will Levis, Malik Willis's run into the end zone for the touchdown. Reed did a great job blocking the corner. I think it was LeJerry Sneed, actually on the outside. That was key and just consistent performance. It was interesting to see the one play. I don't know if you guys caught this, where it was a little wide receiver screen and, got thrown his way. And then he's going back and I don't know, it was incomplete on the play. The play was going to get blown up and Reed went back to Malik Willis and he was jawing at him and not happy with that play. Now, I don't know if the numbers were just where that ball shouldn't have been thrown in the first place. It was the wrong read, or if he was unhappy with the way that Willis threw the ball. I don't know what it was, but it was pretty interesting to see Jaden Reed go back to the huddle really upset with Malik Willis for that particular play. I'd love to know a little bit more about what happened there. Tucker Kraft, plus 0.15, had some really good blocks in this one, did have the big drop as well, had a great play where he had run after the catch, had a couple other blocks that weren't as good, so it kind of evened out a slight positive grade in this one. Zach Tom, Mr. Consistency, plus 0.5, just a really nice day at right tackle. He is so ho-hum, you don't even notice him. It feels like he's on cruise control. It's not quite to the Bakhtiari level, but man, it is not far off right now where you just put him at right tackle, everything's going to go good. And it is so incredibly rare that he has any sort of bad performance and the negative plays throughout the game. He's not a dominant run blocker by any means, but he does his job more often than not. And as a pass protector, he's just been lights out. So awesome job by him again. And then the other interesting one, Josh Jacobs. PFF liked Jacobs a lot more in this one. I had a very small positive on him, plus 0.1. Tough sledding, of course, on the inside. A couple good plays where he made some people miss. I actually thought there was an early play in red zone, and I think it was the one where they had to settle for a field goal, where there was a big cutback lane for a touchdown. I mean, to me, it was fairly easy and obvious, and he just didn't see it. And to me, that was a big one where I thought and there were a couple of those actually where I thought the vision maybe could have been a little bit better, where if he's got vision to the cutback, it could have been maybe a more explosive gain or maybe a touchdown in the first situation. But overall, still a slight positive for me. Again, PFF ended up liking him a little bit more than I did in this one. Top 3 defensive players. Kingsley Enagbare, plus 1.3. The play that he wins on, forces the fumble, gets the sack. I mean, that is as quick and, I don't want to say easy because he had a great move on the play, but that's as quick of a win as you're going to get as an edge rusher in the NFL. And at a big time, Packers are up 13 at that point. The Titans are driving, and they've got an opportunity to go and make that a 6-point game. And man, what a different game that would have been from there on out. Instead, huge sack fumble, and then LVN is able to recover, and massive play from Kingsley Enagbare. And then you've a couple other plays where he wins easily. They're lining him up right over, or just to the left of center. And he beat Lloyd Cushenberry, big free agent signing for the Titans, with ease right over center. They're putting him at defensive tackle, basically, on a pass rushing down, and he wins easy over one of the top paid centers in the league. That was a big time play. A couple other pressures. He was all over the place. He had one play. I don't know if you remember that run play where it got immediately jacked up in the backfield. I think it was Pollard on the play, but then he was able to kind of bounce it outside. It still went for 1 yard or 0 yards, but he almost had a tackle for loss for about 3 in the backfield on that one because he won easily. Probably the best we have seen Kingsley Enagbare in his career so far. Jair Alexander plus 1.2, really good day in coverage, and of course had the pick six. You had those two things, and it's always interesting of like, all right, how do you want to grade the pick six? Like, how big of a value do you want to get it? Because as Ross Uglum pointed out earlier this week, is there any like major breakdown here of like, oh my goodness, the Packers did something exceptional. They disguised the coverage. Jair like unbelievably read the play. It wasn't. He's lined up in off-man coverage. He sees the wide receiver stop. He breaks on it. Now, he did do a great job of reaching outside the frame of his body, plucking it, staying in bounds, and taking it for 6. But that was a brutal play by Will Levis. I mean, a brutal play by Will Levis. So, I mean, you get a little bit of a hat tip and a thank you letter to Will Levis on that one, but Jair still has to go make the play. And then I thought he was sticky in coverage the remainder of the day and shows a little bit more of a propensity to go and make himself available in run defense than I think he did in previous seasons. So that seems to be trending in the right direction as well. And then my third, Devonte Wyatt, plus 0.7. I thought he had a great game. I thought he had a really great game. And I thought he was active in run defense. Again, that's never going to be his primary skill set, but 2 sacks on the day, good pressure, collapsed the pocket. And what we're seeing from Devonte Wyatt right now is finishing. And that's such an important piece because he would win last year pretty immediately at times, but he couldn't finish it. And he would get out of control and get past the quarterback and then almost open up a lane for the quarterback either to step up into or to scramble out of. And now we're seeing him have a more controlled approach. Add on top of that, I think cohesive rush with Gary and Smith and the rest of those guys where they're all kind of collapsing the pocket together. And it's allowing for Devonte Wyatt to be more impactful. Speaking of which, he's having a big time impact in the interior of that defensive line. I think he's playing some of the best football of his career. And I'm not sure we're seeing like this Pro Bowl-esque caliber breakout and like, oh, here it is. But he is playing really good ball. He is a presence on the inside. He is being disruptive. And this is exactly what you wanted from Devonte Wyatt when you spent, the 25th overall pick on him. So really good start to the year for Wyatt. 3 grades in the positive through 3 weeks so far. My bottom 3 defensive players, talked about this on Twitter a little bit. Kenny Clark, negative 0.55. 3 consecutive negative grades, my second lowest graded player on the team in its entirety on offense or defense. Only Quay Walker has a lower grade than him through 3 weeks for me so far. I think he's like 119th out of 124 in PFF's defensive tackle rating so far. A rough start for Kenny Clark. And I saw, this always amuses me. They're like, somebody posted on Twitter, well, yeah, he's getting a bunch of double teams. What do you expect? I'm not grading him in the negative when he's getting, now, if he's going against a double team and he's just getting thrown completely out of his gap and they're like pushing him 5 yards to the side, then yes, there's going to be a negative grade on that. But if he is anything remotely holding up against that double team, that is not going to be a negative. And in fact, him just holding up against a double team can be a positive more often than not. He had a lot of positives in his career where he's able to just anchor against a double team, not allow movement. That is a win for the defensive tackle. So yes, I am very much taking into consideration that he has seen a decent amount of double teams, and he is more often than not getting any sort of negative grades from those type of plays because those are really tough asks of anyone. Now, again, he can't get 5 yards blasted to his left, which has happened a few different times, and those can end up in negatives. But overall, that is very much taken into consideration. I am, grading the plays where he's got a clear one-on-one and he is not getting any sort of penetration, not getting any sort of movement. He's been thrown to the side more often than I've ever seen him in his career. And listen, he was pretty candid in the offseason about how this is a brand new system for him and he's going through a learning curve with it. And Kenny, through the last few years, has not been a fast starter anyway. He usually gets better as the course of the season goes along. Now, the great news is that he has owned Garrett Bradbury in his career, and he gets to face, I think, his probably favorite opponent this upcoming week, and hopefully that can get him on track a little bit. But it's been a tough 3 weeks for Kenny Clark. He is not the Kenny Clark that you would come to expect. And I'm not even saying like, listen, prime Kenny Clark, that guy was kind of gone like 3-4 years ago. But really good Kenny Clark still existed over these last few years. And now this is like, even if it's neutral, it's like, all right, that's fine. You can ramp up through the season. But this has been some pretty big negative grades for Kenny through 3 weeks. And he has got to get it back, to get that mojo back again, hopefully against Garrett Bradbury this week. I would be stunned still if Kenny doesn't end up with a net positive grade towards the end of the season, probably still well into the positive, but got to get this trending in the right direction because right now it's not very pretty football. Eric Stokes is a fun conversation to have. Negative 0.45. Is this an awful game from Eric? No, not at all. Is he the second lowest graded defender? Yes. Listen, he gave up the touchdown to Hopkins. Is that a hang with him? Yeah. It's a beautiful play by DeAndre Hopkins, something he's been doing to a lot of corners for a very long time. Like, he is physical at the point of attack, at the catch point. I mean, Stokes is there. He's in good coverage. And then Hopkins just bodies him out. And then now you would like to see him at least make the tackle there. You can live with it a little bit more, but that's still going to be a negative grade, right? A decent negative. You gave up, you were there in position, you gave up a catch, and then the run after the catch and a touchdown. Like, there's still going to be a negative on there. There was the play where Hopkins runs the route and then goes to the sideline and catches it on the ground along his knees and gets his knees in bounds. Stokes is in coverage on that one. A couple other ones that weren't pictured where he did allow, or like where he didn't get thrown at, that he did allow separation on. So I didn't think it was like a great day from Eric, but you also saw a great play from him in run defense. You saw a couple plays made from him in pass defense. Like, this was not an egregiously bad game by any stretch of the imagination. But when you have a couple of those plays on tape, yeah, it's probably going to end up in the negative a little bit more. So sometimes these things are a little bit, I don't want to say like gray, but like sometimes a negative 0.45 here, like Eric Stokes is like, I still didn't think like he had a bad game. Like, I thought like you can easily win with that performance. And sometimes you just go up against like really good opponents. And DeAndre Hopkins had a really good game in this one, including that play in the end zone where, again, sometimes you have to tip your cap. And I think worse corners would have maybe had a -1 or -2 grade against Hopkins on that day because Hopkins was feeling it a little bit. But overall, I thought it was a fine game, not terrible, but there were a couple things I'm sure he would like to have back, and it ends up in a slight negative and a negative 0.45. Then Eric Wilson, negative 0.2. Nothing brutal, just a couple times targeted in the first drive of the game. Thought he could have been a little bit more aggressive as a tackler. Just some things you can clean up here and there. Nothing brutal, nothing super noteworthy, but a slight negative for Eric Wilson at negative 0.2. Some other noteworthy defenders, Xavier McKinney, plus 0.65. Had the huge interception at the end, ranging over. A couple plays where I thought he probably could have got to his spot sooner. There was a blitz where he came on where I thought he could have been more aggressive and go through the running back to get actually maybe even a sack on the play, but it felt like he was maybe just trying to maintain the pocket instead. Just a couple things here and there for McKinney, but overall, it's still a very positive game led by the interception at the end. Rashawn Gary, I talked about this week. I thought he actually had a really nice game. He was at plus 0.65, had the sack that got wiped out due to Preston Smith, had the pressure that allowed LVN to get the sack, had a couple other plays where he would have gotten a sack, but a different defender beat him by like a millisecond. He was actually far more impactful than the box score would indicate. So listen, do we all want to see Rashawn Gary have a bigger impact on the overall game? I think the answer is yes, but he had a really good game in this one. No complaints whatsoever. Edgerrin Cooper, plus 0.2. A couple of really nice plays. Specifically, he's in run defense on the play, and the run is going to his right, and he's going right, and then Tony Pollard jump cuts back to his left, and he jump cuts back to his left and meets Tony Pollard in the hole. Super athletic play. Really, really fun stuff from Cooper on that one. Had a play where he chased down from behind and made a big hit on the play. Did have a big missed tackle in the open field, however. Preston Smith ended up with a plus 0.3 grade, which should be telling of how good of a game he played outside of that brutal offsides call, because that was a 4-point on the scoreboard offsides penalty. If he's not offsides on that play, which it didn't alter the play in any way, shape, or form, Rashawn Gary gets a sack and they have to settle for a field goal attempt. Instead, it leads to an automatic first down, and the Titans go down and score a touchdown 2 plays later. That is a massive mistake from a veteran defensive end. That can't happen. So that was a very aggressive negative grade, because you can't have that happen, and it literally led to 4 additional points on the board. In a game like that, that could have been huge. But he was awesome the rest of the game. Multiple pressures, good run defense. He kind of made up for it and more through the remainder of the game, which is what you want to see. Hey, everyone's going to make a mistake from time to time. Can you go out and can you make up for it? And this one, Preston Smith really did. Then LVN plus 0.15. He had the sack, of course. I just want to point out here, 3 consecutive games of LVN grading in the positive, which is what you want to see. Is he's right around that 18 to 22 snap count every single game. It seems to be a good number for him, and he's able to go out and have a positive impact on the game. Kind of like we were talking about Gary. Do you want to see him have a bigger impact? Yes. But I like the way that he's playing through 3 games. He's still in year 2. He's growing. He's developing. He's putting a lot of effort and hustle into every single play. And he's in a spot where he can make an impact. And right now, he is doing that. And like I said, in a positive way for 3 consecutive games. All right, so just to recap, top 3 on offense: Malik Willis, Emmanuel Wilson, and Sean Ryan. Bottom 3, Rasheed Walker, Ben Sims, and Luke Musgrave. Top 3 on defense: Kingsley Enagbare, Jair Alexander, Devontae Wyatt. Bottom 3 on defense: Kenny Clark, Eric Stokes, and Eric Wilson. That is going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. Shout out to our Hall of Fame and All-Pro members: Most Hated Minnesotan, PJ Wayne, John Wild, Jay Bradad, Brandon Paletta, Jennifer Wright, Boom Handle, Donna Lee, Lori Lord, Baby QB, David McCluskey, Donald Decker, Dan Miller, Alex Wong, Arnaldo Espinoza, Peter Ritaka, SoCal Pack, Dan Guestford, Love and Football, Jay Zimmerman, B Brown, and Jay Foreman. I'll see you guys all soon. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.